Bibles and turn with me to Acts chapter 17. We're going to be looking at verse 16, and we'll just look down at a few passages out of this chapter. Now, I'm going to give you a tidbit of a study that I'm going to give later on. I'm not going to give the whole thing tonight. I'm just going to kind of give an intro. I figured we'd be a little light tonight, but I want to give just an intro of a teaching that I'm going to give later on down the road. But I felt like it would be fitting. Actually, I didn't really feel like it. I tried to get out of doing this tonight, but God just kept putting it on my heart. And I tried so many other places to go, and I could not get peace on anything. But maybe it's just the dynamic of it being Super Bowl tonight. But I want to talk to you about entertainment and the Christian. Entertainment and the Christian. Now, that's fitting for Super Bowl night, right? So by the time we're through here tonight, we're all going to leave, and nobody's going to want to watch the Super Bowl. So you will not be interested after this lesson. Not really. But that is a big topic if you think about it, because we live in a culture that is driven by entertainment, right? We are easily amused. And yet at the same time, we're so amused that if we're not being amused or entertained, we're bored. How many of you hear that quite frequently today? It's funny on social media like Facebook, where people share their entire life story. You can just watch it unfold through the pages as you scroll down. And when people have absolutely nothing to do, they'll just put on Facebook, "I'm bored." I just let everybody know I'm bored, and I see that a lot. I'm bored. Some of you have probably done that. We live in an entertaining culture. You and I know that. We are driven by entertainment. We spend a lot of money on entertainment, don't we? We do. Movies. How many here have satellite or cable TV? We spend a lot of money just in the room on the basis of, as small of a crowd as this is tonight, with just the premiums that we pay each month for cable, we spend a lot of money on entertainment. How many of you remember when there was Channel 8, Channel 10, and Channel 14? Maybe you got Channel 3, too. You just remember a few channels? You remember they had two classifications for television back years ago. Entertainment and news. That was it. Well, guess what? The news started suffering because entertainment was taking over. So then, what did the news start doing? They started having entertaining news. And now you have news that is strictly entertainment. Seriously, think about it. No longer is it the war on Iraq. It's the war on Iraq. You know, we entertain through giving news now. And it's funny listening to some of the commentators, because they say on the bottom script of a lot of the news channels now, for entertainment purposes only. That's the news you get. It's entertaining news, because why? We are driven by entertainment. And so, what do we do in a culture that's driven by entertainment? Well, we need to understand a few things about an entertaining culture. We need to understand that there are messages in entertainment. There's messages. There are messages in entertainment. I can't even think of the name of the rock group several years ago. It was pre-September 11, 2001. But they were an entertaining rock group, and they actually had already had their album out that they were publishing, and the cover of their album had the trade centers being blowed up. Now, this was before September 11, 2001. And the picture on their album was the trade centers being blown up. And then, of course, 9/11 happened, and guess what they didn't do? They didn't put that album out. But do you know what their message was? Socialism. Anti-capitalism. And so if you're going to be anti-capitalist, guess what you're going to do? You're going to blow up the World Trade Centers. And incidentally, Islam or the Muslims that had come over and blew up the Trade Center. That's ultimately what they did. That was an attack against the economy, etc., and so on. But you see what I'm saying? There was an entertaining group that had a message. Everything about entertainment has a message. Because if we're a culture that's gripped by entertainment, and the world understands this, guess what Satan's going to do? Satan is going to use entertainment to get into your minds. By the way, just take this with you. You'll never think about amusement the same after I tell you this, I promise. The word amuse. What does that mean? Somebody just say, tell me, what does the word amuse mean? Well, muse means to think. The word muse means to think. The word anytime you use the prefix it's a negative. Actually, it means not or to not. So you put and muse together. Muse meaning to think, meaning to not. What is that saying? To not think. Right? So that's what you're doing when you're being amused. You're just turning your brain off so that you can just be like, and you're just soaking it in. Guess what? The world knows this. You will go sit in front of a movie screen for 2 hours to 3 hours being amused. You're just taking it in. You just turn your brain off and you let the world think for you. Now you think that I'm making these things up. Understand something. The world understands this. Satan is the prince of the air. And I don't think it's just talking about the air. I mean the airwaves. And you think about these things and you begin to put all of these things together. You understand that Satan has a purpose. He is the mastermind of getting in your mind. And if you will turn your brain off long enough, he'll think for you. Now you think about this for just a moment. This is how dangerous entertainment can be in a culture that's driven by entertainment. Do you know why preachers back years ago were so successful? Some of your, like Charles Spurgeon, Whitefield, Knox, Mueller, some of these older pastors. By the way, some of you probably have heard of them, but you've probably never heard them. I've heard these guys, and let me tell you something, or at least the ones that had some type of recording while they were able to preach. And let me tell you something about these guys. They were boring. They were. I mean, you would have went to sleep, but yet we hear about these great preachers and how amazing they were. Let me tell you why they were amazing. They were amazing because they didn't live in an entertaining culture. And people would go and listen to a 3 and 4 hour sermon because they didn't. Their minds were not captured by this awe of entertainment that we get through television, news, and amazing orators who can communicate very well. And so we gauge sermons today not by the content, but how well we're entertained. I was telling somebody the other day, the reason that I move around on the stage for 2 purposes. Number one, it's a nervous habit. But secondly, the whole time I'm moving, do you know what's happening in the background? It's changing. And do you know what that helps you do? It helps you to stay focused. When you're watching TV, the background constantly has to change in order to keep you focused. Can you imagine sitting there watching TV and they just have a solid background that never moves and the guy's standing there? You're not going to watch that very long because you have been programmed by entertainment. Back years ago, you could do this. And by the way, again, going back to older preachers of yesteryear and all of those things, whenever I was in Africa, again, a non-entertaining culture where I was at. When I was in Africa and I would preach, understand something, I would get up at the church at 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we would teach for 3 and 4 hours, and the people there would not move a muscle. They just stood there and they soaked it all in because they didn't have to be entertained. You and I live in an entertaining culture, and so what do we do, and how do we deal with a culture that is that's like ours? So do we just go turn all the TVs off, and do we just stop entertainment? Is all entertainment evil? No. Listen, this is what God says. Be in the world, but not of the world. And if you're going to understand your culture, you better understand the entertainment. my suggestion to you is don't turn the TV off, but don't turn your mind off either. If you're going to watch something, study it. My wife hates watching things with me now. This was something that radically changed the way I think about entertainment. When my wife and I watch a TV show or we're watching a program or a movie or whatever, she can't stand it because I sit there and I'm thinking, I can't believe they had the audacity to just put that in there. And she's like, what? Because she didn't even catch it. She didn't even see it. I saw what was subliminal in the message. I caught what they were trying to communicate, and I get mad and upset about it, and I just begin to, I want to throw things at it. And so I'm sitting there learning. I'm educating myself as I'm being entertained. And not all entertainment's bad. Let's get in our text. Let me just show you this real quick, and it's not going to be much. Verse 16, Acts 17, Paul was waiting on them at Athens. Paul had never been to Athens before, it's Greece. His spirit was being provoked within him as he was observing the city full of idols. Keyword, observing. Not being entertained, observing, learning. So he was reasoning in the synagogue with the Jews and with the God-fearing Gentiles, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be present. Some of the Epicureans, the Stoics, the philosophers, these were people who enjoyed debates and learning new things. Some were saying, what would this idle babbler say? He seems to be a proclaimer of strange deities because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection, etc. and so on. Jump down to verse 22. So Paul stood in the midst of Areopagus and said, men of Athens, I observed that you are very suspicious or superstitious or religious in all aspects. Now, how did Paul know that? Because he had been learning about their culture. He'd been studying. For while I was passing through and examining the objects of your worship, I also found an altar with the inscription to an unknown God. Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you. Now, what did Paul do? What Paul just did was he showed you and I how to engage culture. And by the way, churches are notorious for trying to get rid of culture. We want to just pretend it's not there, so let's just leave it outside and let's not deal with it. The problem is not dealing with it when we leave here and we go out and we don't know how to confront it. And I don't believe that God intended for us to be like monasteries. I believe that God intended for us to engage and to be proactive in our culture. Now, in order to be engaged and proactive in our culture, guess what? We have to understand our culture. And if you want to understand the culture of America, you better understand entertainment. In fact, what Paul did, Paul went through the city of Athens, and rather than reaching in his phone reaching his pocket and pulling out his camera to take pictures and just be a sightseer, what Paul did was he studied and he observed. He didn't look at this as an opportunity just to be on vacation, to turn his mind off and not think about things. He looked at this as an opportunity to learn about a culture. And do you know how Paul began his sermon? He began his sermon by using a quote from one of their own philosophers. He had studied and learned enough about the culture that he began with the culture to get into a gospel presentation. And so, how does the Christian deal with entertainment? Again, this is extremely abbreviated, and I wish that I had time tonight to go into so much more stuff. But kickoff is right now, and we've got to hurry up and get through with this so we can be entertained. I'm sorry, I'm just making fun. I'm sorry. I'll do a cartwheel, okay? I can do that too. That's right. We'll just go ahead and get that out of the way. When you are going to be entertained, when you're going to watch a movie, when you're going to watch the Super Bowl, by the way, do you know one of the things that most people watch the Super Bowl for? It's commercials. How many of you have already seen the Budweiser commercial with the little dog? Wasn't that just so cute? You know what I did whenever I watched that? I got so upset. I got so mad. You know why? Because it had nothing to do with Budweiser. It didn't. It was all about playing to the sympathy of people to say, you know what, this isn't so bad. Man, it's intelligent. They're smart. The Christian should be smarter. And we should understand that there are messages in entertainment. There's something that they are trying to communicate, and you have to see it's not all innocent. Do not turn your brains off. Amused to not think. Don't turn your brains off. Study it and read it. And by the way, let me just say this, because I don't want people to say, well, I can go watch anything, and I can go do anything because it's just educational. No. There's some things you just don't need to watch. But if you're going to watch something, there is no excuse for some things that you ought not watch. But if you're going to watch something, watch with an open mind to learn. Watch with an alert mind and look for those messages. You know what I have learned? You know what some of my entertainment is? And this isn't a sick entertainment either. I think this is just fun. I watch movies now not to be entertained, but to be educated, but so that I can find out at the end of it, I want to find out what was the message. And you know an easy way to find out the message? Find out the philosophy of the producers and the writers of the scripts. Find out about their background. Find out what type of find out what their views are. Find out what their worldview is, and you can dissect what that message is that they were getting across and trying to communicate. And by the way, when you begin to do this, you'll begin to see it so clear in everything you do. So, again, the Christian entertainment, there's so much more to this. We're going to do a study. This is an abbreviated message of it. But I just want you to be aware, entertainment, understanding culture, learning these things. I think that we need to do that as a Christian culture, Christians in our culture, to be able to engage the culture. We shouldn't be afraid of it. We shouldn't be scared of it. And we need to be careful, too, about Christian entertainment. Maybe it was, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia? What was his name? C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis said that entertainment makes people silly. If entertainment makes people silly, by the way, he had all these things, but he also had a message too. But if entertainment makes us silly, then Christian entertainment makes us even more silly. And so we need to be careful about Christian entertainment as well, and understand that we can't play on Satan's playground. We'll never be able to outdo the world. We shouldn't even try it. So I just wanted to provoke your thoughts. I wanted to give you some things to think about, and to ponder, not to be amused, to not think, but to be enlightened and to keep your brains working. Don't ever pause, because I promise you, if you give Satan any part of your mind, he'll take every bit that he can get, and he'll think for you. Okay? So.